It's time for Reason.
School funding did not go down. A flat-out, absolute lie. Across the board, in every district as an average, the state funding went up 1% to 2% every single year Governor Brownback has been in office, even after the tax cuts, even after the budgetary issues. The budget continued to climb every single year, and education spending grew by 2% every single year Brownback has been in office.
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Then I'll get on my knees and pray. We don't get fooled again. Don't get fooled again.
Good morning to you. Welcome into the Voice of Reason right here on the Mid-American Network. It is the most patriotic day that we can have. It's Election Day. It's Tuesday. Welcome into the Voice of Reason. I am Andy Hoosier. It's a great honor to have you along here as we start off an Election Day Tuesday. 316-721-8255. 316-721-TALK. If you want to join into the program, I want to hear from you. And in your local elections, do you know who you're voting for? Do you know their platforms? Do you know the issues? We'll talk about those coming up in just a little bit. Welcome into it here, 8 minutes past the hour. I'd love to hear from you. What's on your mind today? I do want to start off the show today, though, with an update from some of the things that are happening as of yesterday with the shooting that happened on Sunday and with some of the shenanigans that happened over the weekend. A lot to get to today, a lot to discuss. But first, do you remember as a child, when you were a child and you're on the playground, and there's maybe some kids that you don't necessarily like that you used to pick on a little bit, maybe have a little fun with. Unfortunately, not being the bully type, but, you know, it's maybe the girl that you liked kind of pulled the pigtails with, or the guy that you used to be, you know, roughhouse with and have a little fun with, or to poke fun or poke gaps at each other and pull pranks on each other. And do you remember back in that time when you were a kid, or maybe as an adult too, who knows, and you used to say, all right, what we're going to do is right at this time, we're going to ruin the whole song that we were singing, or we're going to go streaking in the middle of the street, and we're going to do it, and it's going to be really, really great. And you end up pranking them for them to do it and look foolish while you sit back and laugh at them. Do you remember when these things used to happen? It used to happen all the time as a kid, right? That's exactly what happened this weekend with Antifa. That's exactly what happened with the few isolated cases of complete stupidity that's happened in this nation. And they were unfortunate and they were very devastating, but they were still the poking of the fun of the stupid people that did not get the memo that it was actually a joke of actually not committing these issues. And that's what we've seen. We saw the neighbor that went out, completely tackled Senator Rand Paul in his home in Kentucky and broke 5 of his ribs and caused a serious issue. Now he's in the hospital, not sure when he's actually going to be back to be able to be in the Senate again. It's a very unfortunate event. Come to find out, it wasn't just a personal thing between two neighbors, but it was a anesthesiologist who despises Rand Paul because this anesthesiologist happens to be a Bernie Sanders socialist supporter, hates what Rand Paul actually stands for, couldn't deal with it any longer, saw the opportunity of Rand Paul as he's working out in his yard, working on the flower beds or whatever, doing his thing outside, doing the yard work, and goes out and tries to assault him. He did a very good job of that. Did not get the memo that this whole Antifa rising up on Saturday, November 4th, was actually just a joke and none of it actually happened. I was waiting to see whether the Antifa revolution, quote unquote, was going to happen this weekend. It didn't, except the few that just did not get the memo. That's one incident. Then you see the incident that happened in Texas on Sunday evening with the individual walking in, shooting up a church, killing 26 individuals, and then ended up having, being shot in the end of it because the neighbor ends up pulling out his own assault rifle. Terrible ordeal to have one, right? You know, the whole stopping someone from committing a mass shooting, ends up stopping him, shooting him, wounding him, driving him away, and then him end up either dying from that bullet wound or from turning the gun on himself. At that point, it doesn't really matter. And we'll get to more details on that in just a second as well. The third incident that I'm sure no one's actually really heard about as well, this is a hat tip to Fox 5, that a Dallas man was reported traveling to the nation's capital for the purpose of killing all white police at the White House, and he was arrested by Secret Service. The Secret Service State's Protective Intelligence Division was notified around 2:55 p.m. on Monday by the Montgomery County Police Department in Maryland to be on the lookout for Michael Arija. Arriga. Not sure how he pronounces his name. But according to the Montgomery County Police, they issued the lookout after being contacted by his wife in Texas about her husband's threatening statements. Police responded to the Days Inn Hotel in Silver Spring, where he was staying around 1:30 p.m. and attempted to find him, but he was not there. Secret Service then located him on the north side of Pennsylvania Avenue near Lafayette Park, where he was detained and arrested by uniformed officers around 4:05 p.m. He was not armed with a weapon when they say he was taken into custody. So planning on killing all white police at the White House. Now, I'm sure that falls directly in line with the message and the motivation of Antifa, correct? I mean, you've heard all their statements, you've heard all their comments, that Antifa hates cops because it's institutionalized racism, that they hate cops and they hate law enforcement because it's institutionalized fascism by trying to, enforce the rule of law and tell you exactly how to live your life and what you need to do and what you cannot break the law and what you can and cannot do in life. And it's just a terrible, horrible ordeal because people are actually telling you what you can and cannot do in your life. I know. It's a terrible thing. So between these three incidences, the trio of idiots, we've seen the three cause an issue or attempt to cause an issue. Some of them succeeded. Some of them did not. When the Antifa movement was supposedly supposed to rise up this weekend, and it never happened, except for these three. Now, if we're going to lump that all in and just say those are the three isolated cases, I'd say that overall, I guess we can call that a success. I mean, obviously not. I don't want to call it a success with a devastating shooting, a mass shooting, the largest mass shooting in the state of Texas. I mean, that's no success in any way, shape, or form. However, we were able to stop the individual with a firearm. Shocker, I know, right? A good guy with a gun stopping the bad guy with a gun. And by the way, it was the same type of gun as an AR. The assault rifle, it's a terrible ordeal how we even have those things, but, the good guy with the gun was actually able to stop it. A good old boy that was just living next door to the church and said, hey, you know what? You're not going to do this to me. Not only shot him, but grabbed a buddy, got in the vehicle, and chased after him. Because that's the right thing to do. Because that's what good guys end up doing. Taking care of their community. Taking care of their brothers and sisters. That's what a community is all about. Now, when we talk about gun control, as we did yesterday, as everybody talked about yesterday, as we talk about gun control, as the progressives try and advocate for gun control, then they try and say, well, we shouldn't be having these guns. We need to have more regulation. We need to have more background checks. And how did this individual even receive a firearm in the first place? And they lump it up as a crazy conspiracy in order to say that he shouldn't have received a gun. We need more stringent gun laws, and we need to impose harsher gun enforcement so that way he cannot receive a gun, nor really anybody else, right? When come to find out, according to the New York Times, the reason this individual was able to obtain a firearm was because of a error in the filing of his paperwork with the Air Force. As you know, that he was disbanded from the Air Force because he had assaulted his wife and his child, that he had some mental issues and some anger issues, apparently. And come to find out, the Air Force admitted on Monday that it failed to enter the man's domestic violence court-martial into the federal database that could have blocked him from buying a rifle that he used to kill 26 people. Now, the first thing that I would like to say is thank you for coming clean. Whether you made the mistake or not, which it sounds like the Air Force did, they did not file the paperwork properly. They did not file this into the federal database for him to be able to be blocked. Thank you for coming clean with that. I would love to see that more. If you made an error, and I know as a business owner, if you are a business owner, you like to hear this as well. When one of your employees comes and says, hey, I screwed up. This is what's going on. This is what we have to do to fix it. Okay, hey, you know what? At least we know the situation. We appreciate your honesty. Let's go ahead and just move forward and get it taken care of, right? That's the proper way to handle things. When that's not the case, you got to do a little bit more digging to figure out what's going on. We still have answers, or we still have questions, a lack of answers, from the Las Vegas shooting. Because questions continue to arise. All right, was there more than one shooter? How many rounds did he actually have? How did he obtain all those weapons? Who is this guy? What was his actual motive? What's really going on here? We still have questions that were never answered. And the government's usually got that wall built up between us and them to actually understand what the real issue is for whatever reason, whether you want to lump it into a conspiracy theory, whether you want to lump it into a classified quote-unquote situation, however you want to categorize it, we still don't have a whole lot of answers. This one we do. The Air Force came out and said, oopsies, our bad. Whether they're trying to protect him because, hey, you know what, he may have made a mistake. He assaulted his wife and kid, but, we really don't want to file that into the federal database right now because that could ruin his life with that kind of mark in the federal government, in the database. Now, some would say he deserves it, and I would agree, but at the same time, they may have been looking out for him. They may have just been backlogged, and they didn't do that properly yet, and they were going to get to it, but it took a little bit of time. Maybe they just filed it wrongly, and they just didn't put it in there either by accident or intentionally. It doesn't matter. The fact is, they made the mistake. They openly admitted they made the mistake, and now they're doing an internal investigation in the Air Force on how to make sure that mistake does not happen again. And I appreciate that. And I respect them a heck of a lot more for that, to understand the gravity of the situation and for them to actually admit what was wrong, admit what happened, and then be able to move forward. But doesn't that create a whole nother talking point that I know no one else is going to want to do? That the mainstream media and the progressives who are advocating for gun control are not going to want to have when they talk about the fact that the government is inefficient with its processes. And if you think that creating more gun legislation, if you think creating more gun laws, if you think that making it more difficult to purchase a firearm is going to be efficient, then we should look at the system that's in place already that's already inefficient. They're not going to care, though. They're going to advocate for more gun control. They're going to say that this was a one-time mistake and the government's spot on, baby. They got this. They're pretty efficient, when we can absolutely pat them on the head and say, oh, how cute, and laugh at them nicely. This is Election Day Tuesday. The Voice of Reason. Stay here.
You're listening to the Voice of Reason on the Mid-America Network.
Hey, good morning to you. Welcome back into the Voice of Reason right here on the Mid-America Network. Appreciate you hanging out with us today on Election Tuesday. It really is the most patriotic day of the year. I love Election Day. I love it. Now, I know a lot of people try and go out and vote early, which is totally fine, I guess. I like going on. There's something special about Election Day. Everybody's talking about it. The news is reporting. The candidates do their last big push. You go out to the precinct. You show your identification card, your voter registration, your ID. I know that's a terrible thing to say because apparently that's racist. I'm still trying to figure that one out, how it's racist for you to actually need to have a voter ID card and proof of you being a citizen and that you're actually voting. It was funny. There was a Facebook thread that was going on, what was it, on Friday or Saturday? And as you know, I like to throw the wrench into the system a little bit. And this lady, it was actually about Governor Brownback and the Democrats going to Washington, D.C. to try and attack the GOP tax plan. And in order to attack the tax plan, they were using Kansas as the example. And we railed on that pretty hard on Friday and had some fun with it. There was a thread on Facebook from, I can't remember if it was one of the news sources or if it was from the Kansas Democratic Party, which I like to, throw a little fun at as well and throw the wrench in there. And there was so much hate on that page, just going after Governor Brownback, going after Republicans, going after conservatives, going after the quote-unquote trickle-down economics, which is complete bull, but they can try and use that example if they'd like to. So they're just going at it and just name-calling and trashing and yada, yada, yada. So I made a comment because I like to do that. And I said, boy, there's a lot of hate on this page for being lovey-dovey left-wingers. And, of course, that stirred up the pot, and this individual, oh, I can't believe that you actually said something like that, and we're just sick and tired of Governor Brownback and sick and tired of conservatives. We're sick and tired of your low taxes and you trying to help out the 1% and the rich. And, of course, I responded appropriately by saying, first off, you making $60,000 or more, you're going to see the highest tax rates in the state of Kansas now as a family, as a household. So congratulations. Now you can pay your fair share. And then they're like, well, you need to stop your Tea Party rhetoric. And it went back and forth a little bit. And they, of course, would not respond to the actual argument that I made. They just say, well, I've listened to your radio show. You're a hateful individual and you don't know what you're talking about. You need to stop your Tea Party libertarian rhetoric because it's old and it's dying off and it's just not going to work anymore. which, of course, I responded by saying thank you for listening to my program, because that means that you're actually listening. And whether you disagree or agree with me, I don't really care, but I appreciate you tuning in and listening. And I would love for you to call in and argue with me. And actually, instead of just name calling and saying that I'm a hateful individual, respond to the stats that I gave, saying that education spending has gone up, that the budget and spending at the state level has continued to go up, that repealing the LLC loophole, quote unquote, only compensated for $250 million out of the $1.2 billion. The rest of it was personal income tax. So, I mean, I'm missing something here. How is that a good thing to repeal all this and raise all of our taxes? I just don't get it. And they, of course, went back and just said, well, you're terrible in rhetoric and yada, yada, yada. So I find it ironic that they're not able to rebut the facts. I reported facts to them. Oh, the highways are crumbling. Actually, they're not. They went from the 5th best in the country to the 3rd best in the entire country based on the federal government's Department of Transportation and their rankings of state highways. Correct me if I'm wrong. You're just a libertarian rhetoric talker, blah, 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 blah. And they won't respond to it. So today, Election Day, is the day that we can make that change. They can spout all the liberal, crazy left-wing rhetoric that they want to, with no backing of it whatsoever except for emotion, no backing except for the talking points that have been handed to them. All right, here's what you say. You say that Republicans are evil and they're racist and they're bigoted and they're neo-Nazis and that we have all the answers and it's going to be great. So use that on your Twitter, put that on your 160-character tweet, and then blast it out, and then everybody will say the same thing and it'll be awesome because that is our argument. That's how the progressives kind of operate when we think for a little bit more for ourselves. So they could spout that all they want to. It's not going to work, though. When it comes down to elections, it really is just the turnout of you and I showing up, making our voice heard, and then actually doing something productive. Because we show it through our actions. They show it through their emotion and through their Twitter account and through their Facebook account. The prime example of that is the special election that happened at the beginning of this year. What was it? April of this year. Here in the 4th Congressional District in the Wichita area, when it came to Mike Pompeo's seat, as he went on to the CIA, and Ron Estes and James Thompson. And James Thompson's progressive Bernie Sanders movement was very, very loud in this area. Very loud. They were rallying harder than I've ever seen the Democrats rally around this area, thinking they actually had a chance. They lost by 8 points. They lost by 8 points. And that's, by the way, with the entire turnout for the election, less than what Mike Pompeo received by himself in the general election last year. Meaning that even with the lack of enthusiasm from Republicans, we still showed up and we kicked their you-know-whats in the election when they had all the protesters, they had all the activists, they had all the energy, and we still beat them. So let them be as loud as they want to. When it comes down to the local elections and to our local communities and to our school board and to our city councils and whatever election that you have in your local area, you need to show up, you need to make that voice heard, and you need to silence them because, I mean, they won't stop, but they will take that hit. The Democrats are in turmoil. The progressive agenda is crumbling before our eyes, and we have an opportunity to silence that right now. And the only way we do that is by showing up to the voting booth today, even when there's maybe a non-party affiliated candidate. Conservative values, conservative principles, conservative ideals is what's actually going to make this happen. We can show up and we can do it and we can silence the opposition. This is the Voice of Reason. Bottom of the hour news coming up. Stay here.
For Reason.
Some lawmakers remain skeptical that it would raise sufficient revenues, meaning that the lawmakers that are skeptical about this are not saying that it goes too far, but it doesn't go far enough.
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Welcome back into the Voice of Reason right here on the Mid-American Network. Appreciate you hanging out with us today. It's Election Tuesday, the most important day that we have all year round, except, of course, for other election days. But what do you do? Hey, today is the day. This is the local elections, many of them, although there are some big ones around the country. As you know, as you've been hearing on the news, a few governor's races. There's a few Senate seats that are being filled. Mo Brooks, as you know, and some of the conservatives down in, Alabama, where that election is going to be going on. There are some big changes that potentially could be coming today, there's some really big changes, good changes that could be happening. We could have an opportunity to get more conservative individuals into certain seats at local levels and at federal levels. We have opportunities to be able to make a big difference, and you can do that with your vote, if you're in one of those areas, by the way. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. If you want to join in, I'd love to hear from you today. You can comment on whatever you'd like to, whether you want to talk about the shooting that happened in Texas, whether you want to talk about the elections coming up. Do you know who you're voting for if you have not voted yet? Go out, do your due diligence. For the Wichita area coming up in the next couple hours, we'll play the montage that we put together for our city school board candidates, the Wichita school board candidates that we've had on the show. And we do appreciate, again, them all joining the show, as many of them as we could. 6 out of the 10, I think, is a pretty good success for a radio program. So we do appreciate that. After this election, it's going to be focused on nonstop legislative coverage. In the state of Kansas, our legislative session begins here in January, in just a couple of months. In Oklahoma, as far as I'm aware, they're still having their special session go on. I don't know whether they've been able to resolve that yet or not. And then their session coming up next year as well. And I have to give them credit. When we talk about the budgetary issues, when we talk about the spending issues, Oklahoma is the example that we need to have. And I know people down there are saying, what? Are you kidding me? But bear with me here for a second. Oklahoma knows the proper process on how to actually handle things. For example, what have we seen here in the state of Kansas? We've seen, as of lately, and if you're not in either of these states, listen up, because this is pertinent to you as well, the example of state by state on how to resolve budgetary issues. There are two polar opposites in these two states right now. In Kansas, when we had our budgetary issue last year, or the beginning of this year, what are you supposed to do, and what did we do? Well, what we did was that we increased taxes, and then we increased more taxes. And then, by the way, we increased spending to not compensate and fall under the new taxes and the new revenue we have, but we increased spending above what those tax increases were, because those tax increases really are supposed to just compensate for the shortfall we already had. Then we raise spending by an additional $400 million over the next couple of years. When we're looking out 2 years from the budget, we still see another $1 billion budget shortfall at the end of it, because those tax revenues actually didn't go to compensate for anything else except for our current shortfall, not our future shortfall. So well done, guys. Well done. We just spent and raised taxes and then felt we were doing something productive. I'm not a fan of it. A lot of people are still trying to justify it. I can't justify it in any way, shape, or form, because we're still looking at an outlook of 2 years from now with a shortfall. And by the way, we're still arguing that we don't have enough money in our programs, like education. We'll get to that in just a little bit. The way you're supposed to do it is when you run into a shortfall, number one, you do a budget cut. When you still run into a shortfall, number two is you do another budget cut. Number three is when you run into the shortfall after the two cuts and you do a third cut and you cut more. And then you get down to the bare minimum, the skeleton crew at the statewide level. Yeah, I know that people are going to freak out. Nope. But that's the process you're supposed to do. Last resort is the number 4 step in the process, is then you minimally raise taxes in order to compensate temporarily for the rest of the shortfall after 3 or 4 different cuts. Then you say, all right, we're down. We had $1 billion shortfall. Now we're down to about $200-300 million. We just can't find anywhere else to trim the fat off, to be able to cut, to be able to consolidate. We can't do it. Let's raise taxes just a smidgen, and it's only going to be temporary just to compensate for that. Then what's going to happen is between all of the cuts in the government and the minimal raise in taxes, we're going to see the economy come back. We're going to see the industries come back. We're going to see the GDP growth come back. We're going to see people go back to work. We're going to see people contributing to society, which means more people are coming into the states, more people are working, more people are contributing to the tax system, and then we start seeing revenue grow and grow and grow. And then when that happens, then you start to cut those taxes back down again. That's the process. It's a very simple 6-7 step process. That's kind of what happened in Oklahoma and what's happening right now. They're to the point to where they cut and they cut and they cut and they cut. Now they need to look at, are we able to cut any more, or do we have to raise taxes minimally a little bit until the economy comes back? That's where they're at. That's the stage they're at right now. Kansas didn't do that. And normally you don't even have to go through this entire process in its full extent anyways, because of the fact that the economy usually bounces back pretty quickly. industries, whether it's agriculture, whether it's oil and natural gas, whether it's any program or any industry or any business, usually bounces back pretty quickly, pretty swiftly. So you do a couple of little cuts, and then you see it grow back, and then you're finding you keep moving forward. Thanks to Barack Obama and the progressive liberal agenda, that didn't happen at the national level and across the states because we screwed up trade pretty badly. We killed oil and natural gas because we didn't like that because it's evil, terrible stuff that's raping the earth of its resources and it's ruining the environment and all that junk. We didn't see GDP growth because he liked to tax and he liked to spend at the federal level. So we saw for 8 years a lack of any GDP growth, as many hosts are talking about, and as we have talked about numerous times here, less than 3% GDP growth. You have to have anywhere from 3 to 5% GDP growth in order to have a sustainable economy. When we're under 3%, that is stagnant.
Oh, it was George Bush's fault.
Okay. That's why it was 8 years of Barack Obama for that happening, and less than 1 year, we're already seeing 3.5% GDP growth under Donald Trump. I'd say that's a success, and it's not Barack Obama because he's not in office anymore. So usually we'll see GDP growth rise pretty quickly. So there's a difference in idealism in the process on how this works. Kansas refused to cut anything, and we just raised taxes. Oklahoma cut and cut and cut, and now they may have to raise a few taxes just to compensate on the back end. Not doing that is the primary first off. Hey, yep, well, we got a shortfall, got to raise taxes. Nebraska, another great example of that. The governor came out and said at the beginning of this year, yeah, you know what, we had a shortfall. We're running into some budgetary issues. We're going to cut because we're not going to raise taxes. And they were short enough to where they could do that and compensate for that on their own as just nothing more than budget cuts alone, and they're set and they're moving forward. So anybody, regardless of where you're listening or what state that you're in right now, there's a big difference in practices on what's being done. And now we can step back and see which one's going to succeed and which one's going to fail. They say that it was implemented poorly with the tax cuts in 2012 with Sam Brownback, and that's just not the case. Again, that's a falsehood. That's a lie. The tax cuts were not implemented poorly. The back-end budget restraints were just non-effective. They just didn't do anything because they didn't cut. They thought that we could continue to spend the same amount when we have less revenue coming in. Try that in your home and see how well that works for you. That your salary gets cut in half, but yet you still have the lifestyle spending as if you were on your old lifestyle and on your own salary. See how well that works for you. So now we have Democrats in the state of Kansas running for governor for next year who are coming out and making comments. And even Republicans as well. First off, the Republicans, Ed O'Malley, Republican candidate, said that the tax policy was lacking logic and strategy, which I just don't understand how that works, but good luck for you. If you were up on Mars, he said, looking down on Kansas the last 7 years, I think you'd have to describe the whole thing as lacking strategy and logic. The supply side economic program was sold as a means to fueling job expansion. It prompted massive state government budget deficits. In response to the revenue shortfalls, lawmakers 2 years ago had to approve steep increases in the statewide sales tax, and this year adopted the $1.2 billion boost in income tax. Quote, biggest tax cut in history of the state in 2012, said O'Malley, followed by the largest tax increase in state history in 2015, followed by another biggest tax increase in state history in 2017. Escalation of income tax has led our business men and women to deal with this the way they hate the most, which is instability and lack of clarity. We're running things like a very bad business. And I would agree with that, Ed O'Malley. And I'm not attacking him per se right now. I'm just, to me, this comment is short-sighted. Because, yeah, we are running it like a bad business because you did not cut spending. And if that's the point you're trying to make, then kudos to you. If you just say, yeah, you know what, we should have, not cut taxes, then I would strongly disagree. Because we need to cut taxes all the time. We need to cut it sliver by sliver by sliver. Hey, the economy's doing well. Let's cut a little more taxes. Let's find the happy, the bell curve that people talk about, the nice little graph, and you see the bell curve, and you want to find the middle of the bell curve there. The bell curve works best when you have more people paying into the system with less smaller tax rates, and you see more revenue in that sense, as opposed to having just a few paying a large chunk in some of that, because they're the evil Richie riches, and they want to make them pay their fair share. So you have the large richest pay really high tax rates, and then a lot of people either not paying or they're paying really high rates as well and running them into the ground, which means then they start needing social programs because they can't afford to live because they're paying a lot into the government, but they're getting free things, right? They're getting free things. This is the socialist mentality. This is and I'm not saying that's what Ed O'Malley believes in here. I'm just saying that if we believe in the lack of tax cuts, that's the road we go down. We need to incentivize all the time, no matter what state you're in, to incentivize individuals to come there. And the only way you're going to do that is when you say, hey, we have lower tax rates in that state that you may be considering to move to. We have great industries here. We have businesses that want to stay because it's stable, because we have low tax rates for them, because we incentivize them to hire individuals, which means you're going to have low tax rates, which means you're going to have lower living expenses and cost of living in the state, which means you're going to have better opportunity and more stable career, which means you're going to want to move here, which is going to be super awesome for you. And when you have hundreds of thousands of people doing that, saying, hey, I see that opportunity, then you see more tax revenue. And then the government can grow in comparison to the GDP and to the economy, not grow based on inflation, not grow based on just injecting itself with a crap ton more tax revenue and then saying, hey, you know what, we'll just compensate on the back end by raising taxes once we run out of our means. It's not the way it's supposed to work. The differences are astounding between just neighboring states, Kansas, Oklahoma, and Nebraska. Kansas, unfortunately, seems to be the one to where we just said, hey, we're going to go down our own path and do a 180 on conservative principles. Not a big fan of that. This is The Voice of Reason. Stay here.
You're listening to The Voice of Reason on the Mid-America Network.
Welcome back into the Voice of Reason, wrapping up hour number 1 right here on the Mid-America Network. Appreciate you hanging out with us today. It's Election Tuesday. It is the most patriotic day that we can have. Talking about the taxes, the differences between Oklahoma, between Kansas, between Nebraska. It's kind of ironic, isn't it? I mean, the Mid-America region, we would say we would be mostly united under conservative Republican values, and we are for the most part. But when it comes to the budgets, man, boy, we got some fun spenders there. They love it. There was a forum, by the way, of Democratic gubernatorial candidates for the state of Kansas. And shockingly, to some degree, not shockingly in other areas, they all kind of talked in unison about the sales tax, the food sales tax in the state, and how it's too high. And I would agree to some degree. However, of course, they link it in as well. It's too high, which it is. It's the largest, highest sales tax rate on groceries in the country. At the same end, if we actually go towards nothing but a fair tax, a sales tax, as opposed to income tax, then it would be just fine and people could actually afford it. But they want income tax and they want sales tax. But they do want to lower it because now they want to sound like they're the fiscally conservative spenders and the fiscally conservative people with low tax rates to take care of the less fortunate, which I find quite comical when they talk about raising income taxes for everybody because we need to pay our fair share, including those evil business owners like farmers and small retail stores and people with small businesses. Yeah, they're the ones that need those tax increases because they have to pay their fair share. It's very ironic and funny to me. Let's go to the phones here, shall we? 721-8255, 316-721-TALK. Good morning. What's your name?
Scott.
Scott, how are you, sir?
Well, from what I've seen, they got a candidate that loves special interests and loves using eminent domain against the poor people here in Wichita. And his name is Mike Kennard. He seems to be a person who didn't do anything when he was in school board position. And I don't think he's going to do anything for the people if he voted in the 1st District City Council.
Why do you say that?
Well, I just said why. He didn't do anything when he was on the board. He has special interests that like to use eminent domain against poor people. So I just said why.
Very interesting. Well, I mean, I would say that a lot of people have special interests and backed by donors of some way, shape, or form. So I can't really discredit him for that and say that he's backed by donors and special interests, because I think everybody is, aren't they?
Well, one thing about it, you have special interests that go against the public interest. And public interest is what they're supposed to be about, being an elected official.
Well, I mean, that's I don't know who those special interests are, so I'd be interested to see, and that would be those due diligence of like you. So I appreciate you, being concerned about that, being concerned about the special interests and the backers. Again, I don't know who those are. I haven't really looked into them. I probably could, but I haven't done a whole lot of research on the special interests. So I appreciate the call there, Scott. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. We will be getting into, by the way, in hour number 2, once we drop the stations on the west part of the state and beyond. We'll talk a little bit more about the city council and the school board for the Wichita area here, because it is extremely important. But I do want everybody in the last minutes here just to remind everybody, no matter where you are, to go and vote for those school board, for the city council, for whatever elections you have in your area, because that is an issue. No matter, everybody's got their own pet issue, which is great, whether it's special interests, whether it's fiscal conservatism, whether it's social conservatism, whether it's conservatism just all around, or whether it's lack thereof. I mean, whatever your issue is, you need to pay attention to those issues. You need to pay attention to those candidates. And there are some really great candidates in this area. There are some sketchy candidates in this area, I think. And I've done the due diligence that I can, the best that I can, to be able to try and get that information out there, so that way you can make that judgment and that decision all by yourself. Once this election is done, it's going to be a little bit easier and more free reign for us to start talking to legislators. And you, by the way, on the western part of the state of Kansas, in the Garden City area, get ready, because I'm going to be reaching out to you. We're going to be talking about this session. We're going to be talking about what spending that we want to do on the statewide level, what the agenda is going to be at this new legislative session in just a couple of months. It's going to be kind of an important thing, so stay tuned in and get ready as we start talking to you. We will, by the way, be getting on some of our congressmen and women here on the show here relatively soon as well at the federal level. I haven't talked about it much, unfortunately. We haven't had a whole lot of time with our local elections, but we do have major tax reform going on at the federal level. Can we get it through? Have the Democrats in the state of Kansas been able to block it and be productive, quote unquote, from their agenda to stop major tax reform for you to keep money in your pocket? All these Democrats running for governor talking about lowering sales tax rates, again, find it very ironic as they're talking about how terrible it is to actually cut taxes at a statewide level. This is The Voice of Reason. Hour number 2 coming up. Stay here.
It's time for Reason.
School funding did not go down. A flat-out, absolute lie. Across the board, in every district as an average, the state funding went up 1% to 2% every single year Governor Brownback has been in office, even after the tax cuts, even after the budgetary issues. The budget continued to climb every single year, and education spending grew by 2% every single year Brownback has been in office.
This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Then I get on my knees and pray. We don't get fooled again. Don't get fooled again.
Good morning to you. Welcome into The Voice of Reason right here on the Big Talker, 1480 on the AM side, 102.5 on the FM side, KQAM. It is a Tuesday. It's an election Tuesday. It is the most patriotic day in America. America, baby. That's what it's all about. Welcome into it. This is The Voice of Reason. I am Andy Hoosier. Great to have you along. It's a great honor. 316-721-8255. 316-721-TALK. If you want to join into the program, shoot me a message, by the way, on Facebook, on the Voice of Reason page, on the KQAM page, on the Twitter, on the Facebook Live feed. I do appreciate, by the way, we have a lot of viewers on Facebook Live today. We love that. We thank you for tuning in for that. Like the feed, share it on your own page. Let's create this. Let's grow it. We have more and more people checking it out every day, which we love and we very much appreciate. Because of that. At the bottom of this hour, I did not get a chance to do it yesterday in this hour. I know as being a morning show and a drive time, people are kind of tuning in, tuning out as they go to work, as they're starting their day, as they're doing their thing, and it's very difficult to catch the entire program. The podcast, by the way, is available. If anybody misses stuff, if you want to tune in to things later on, you're more than welcome to do so. VOR. as in voice of reason, vor.podbean.com. You can go, you can find it on iTunes. By the way, you can subscribe to the iTunes feed, so every time I upload a show, it downloads automatically on your side. However you want to do it, you're more than welcome to check out the podcast. I know it's very difficult to be able to get all the information. Today is election day, and I want to open up lines. So no guests today, just you and I chit in the chat, advancing conservatism. We were going to have Mark Walters, host of Armed American Radio, come on the show in the 8 o'clock hour to talk a little bit about the shooting and his take from the gun perspective of this. But the problem is he's actually going to be off today as he's doing some personal things with the family. So, and actually the other way around, tune in tonight at 8 o'clock, and I will be filling in for Mark Walters on Armed American Radio. Really excited about doing that as we talk guns from that sense. So he's not going to be able to join us, obviously, since he's going to be out, and I'm filling in for his show. So it's open lines to you. It's election day. At the bottom of the hour, we will play the montage of the school board candidates, as we did not get to do yesterday in the 7 o'clock hour, just because of time restraints and things going on. So we will play that in this hour at the bottom, so that way you have a chance. So maybe you did not hear it yesterday, you can hear it today. We may play it in the 8 o'clock hour again as well for a reminder for everyone. Get your pen and paper and write down the candidates, either a yay or nay, thumbs up, thumbs down, plus or negative, whatever you think of the candidates. If you do want to talk about city council as well, you're more than welcome to do so. We appreciate the call from Scott in the last hour talking about the city council candidates. And I would say, again, from the comment that he made, that every candidate has special interests and donors. Obviously, that's how you get your financing for a campaign. And I'm not going to fault anybody for that. Now, if you want to go after their platform, if you want to go after maybe the platform of some of those special interests, then all the power to you. And that's what the election's all about. So that's up to you to find. If you want to, if that's the big issue that bothers you, is the donors and the special interest behind the financial backings of a certain candidate. I like to look at their platform. I know that if they, based on their platform, conservative, Republican, Democrat, liberal, whatever the case is, even with a nonpartisan election like city council or school board, that more conservative principles, you may have more conservative financial backers and donors. If you're more on the liberal tendencies, then you'll probably have more Democratic liberal special interests behind you. And that's really how it is. Before we get into this topic, though, this hour, I need to talk about this. I need to comment on this. You may have heard this in the statewide news on the Mid-America Network here, but here's Hat Tip to Cake TV. Kansas man admits to racist graffiti on his own car. This story, all about it, does not make sense. Now, first off, if you remember, this happened about a week or so ago during Halloween, and there were racial slurs that were painted all over a car, and it was turned into the police, and it was this big ordeal because now there's, these white supremacist racists running around and just making racial slurs to individuals in the community. And it was this big deal. Come to find out, the black Kansas man, according to Cake TV, had admitted he put racist graffiti on his own car as a Halloween prank that got out of hand. Police received a report at 7:25 a.m. last Wednesday that the vehicle had been defaced with graffiti containing racial slurs and a threat. The Riley County Police Department said in a release posted on Facebook that no criminal charges would be filed against the 21-year-old individual for filing a false report. Authorities concluded filing charges would not be the best interest of the citizens of Manhattan. Quote, this admission led to a series of conversations between the Riley County Police Department and to the individual. Will not be in the best interest of the citizens to be comprised of the Manhattan community. This makes no sense to me. How is this a joke? How is pulling a prank by writing racial slurs on your own vehicle, then filing it and calling to report it to the police, how is that a prank? How does that do anything, first off, for the community? Second off, to say, ha, gotcha. I mean, what's the end game here? Either people have no idea how to pull pranks anymore, because at the end of it, you're supposed to have a ha, and that did not happen in this one. All it did was rile people up, thinking there's a bunch of white supremacist neo-Nazis running around making racial slurs of people of African-American descent on their cars. I don't understand what the motive of this prank was. Maybe it wasn't followed through properly. Maybe he didn't think it through, which it sounds like that's what the case was here. But what's the point? To try and bring awareness to racism in our community? It's not doing any good. So, well done. You have now done the worst prank in history. Well done. 721-825-5721-TALK. I don't get it. It makes no sense to me on why anybody first would want to do the prank, on why you would want to rate racial slurs when you attack individuals for making racial slurs. You write them on your car, think it's going to be a ha-ha prank, call the police and report it, start an investigation, and then come out and say, yeah, this has gone too far. Sorry, I'm going to back out and admit the fact that I did it myself. Come on. It makes no sense whatsoever. 721-825-5721-TALK. Going into the election today. Go out and vote. Hopefully on your way to work, you're able to stop in and actually vote this morning, and you're able to feel good. Get the I voted sticker, which is always something great to have. As you go in, you need to remember a few things. This election for school board and for city council is extremely important, not just in the Wichita area, but all over. All over. Everywhere there's an election. And I know there's some all over in many different communities. And we haven't focused a lot on them, unfortunately. We just didn't have the time. And Wichita being the biggest district, we needed to cover that one with the most attention. But there are elections all over the areas here for school boards, for city council, for whatever elections that you may have. Pay attention to it and go and vote for it. But as we talk about education and we try to get the information out there the best that we can, and we try to make the listener and try to make the constituents aware of the real serious issue of education, which is not spending, by the way. It's too much spending. It's the lack of efficiency, the lack of transparency, the lack of understanding of the educational system. We've talked to some candidates, some of them very good, some of them, they have their own opinion that I would strongly disagree with. And I would say that when we talk about budget cuts, when we talk about spending cuts, when we talk about consolidation, when we talk about shortening the school year, when we talk about not giving teachers raises, when we talk about a lot of issues that have been the main focal talking point in education, we've tried our best to let individuals know that that's just not the case. If teachers have not gotten raises in a long time, it's because that the administration has chosen not to do so, not because that they were lacking funding. You cannot have budget cuts. Let me rephrase that. You cannot have a lack of budget and an increase in spending at the statewide level when there's been legislation for the last 8+ years at the statewide level for more funding. It just doesn't work that way. They're not going to cut it and say, yeah, I know that we have a Supreme Court issue right now, a legal issue on whether we're going to have more funding or not, and we need to, we're just going to cut spending. It's not going to happen. Brownback did not cut spending. The consolidation, the lack of spending at the district level, at the school board level, that handles the budget, the teachers' unions, the administration side that's been growing and growing and growing, that has to do with the lack of programs at the school level. Why do we not have home ec? Why do we not have auto shop? Why do we not have woodworking shop? Well, it's because, budget cuts. No, it's not the case. That just wasn't a priority to them. When we talk about the districts that increased in administration and decreased in actual number of students and student enrollment, that is a sure tail sign. Now the latest number comes out, and we've talked about the largest operating cash reserves hitting $2 billion in the state of Kansas. Wichita having over $100 million, $120 million sitting in cash reserves. Operating cash reserves is sitting there. Now, whether they're not able to use it for some reason or not, the question would be why. Why can't we use it? We had to shorten the school year last year. We had to consolidate. We've had to lay off teachers. We've had to not be able to give teachers raises. Why? When we have over $100 million sitting in operational cash reserves. And then other money sitting in other reserves. Records. And then we see this that just came out yesterday. Hat tip again to the Kansas Policy Institute. Not only are we seeing cash reserves, but now we're seeing what? Kansas school funding set at record highs. Kansas school funding set more records in 2017, according to the Kansas Department of Education. Total aid to schools set a new record at $6.04 billion. And per pupil spending as an average set a record at $13,236. $13,000 for an average per pupil spending as an average over the state. Now that fluctuates. Obviously, some districts are spending close to $25,000 per pupil because of how the money breaks down. State aid by itself, without even federal grants, without even local municipalities and their grants or whatever the case is, state aid topped $4 billion for the first time with per-pupil state aid at $8,714. Funding also set new records for KPERS pension payments excluded. Total non-KPERS funding was $5.831 billion. So as a recap, total funding, 2017, record spending. It's increased every single year. Record spending now at over $6 billion, almost $6.1 billion. Without KPERS, total spending per pupil over $13,000 per student. Now tell me where the budget cuts have happened. Tell me where the spending cuts have happened. Tell me where the consolidation has happened. We've talked to some candidates that said, well, we need teacher salary hikes. Good. We need those. Why haven't we done it? Well, we've had budget cuts. No, we haven't. Well, we're short on cash. No, we're not. Operational cash reserves sitting there waiting to run. Now, we can talk about expenses, operating expenses going up. Absolutely. Inflation goes up. The cost of the goods go up. The cost of the expenses go up when it comes to resources in the classroom, when it comes to maybe health care, when it comes to the teachers, when it comes to the KPERS and pensions plans. Yeah, operational expenses go up and up and up every single year. That's just the way the economy works, unfortunately, thanks to, by the way, inflation and progressive values wanting to increase the rates of these because, well, we need to raise minimum wage, right? Well, because we need to inject money for quantitative easing at the federal level, raising the cost of living up everywhere we go. We see expenses, absolutely. And if you want to talk about those expenses, maybe we could talk about health care under Obamacare. The same ones advocating for the expansion of Medicaid and government social programs are the same ones that are complaining that the pension plans and the health care plans at the state level for state employees, which includes, by the way, teachers, is too expensive. So their cost expenses are going up. And yeah, those goes up. The funny thing is, however, is that first off, the private sector has to compensate for those things as well, not by increasing revenue. They try to increase revenue, but not by just saying, hey, we're just going to raise taxes and then we can actually see more revenue coming in. It doesn't work that way. The private sector operates just a little bit differently, doesn't it? The other fun tidbit about this, the $13,236 per pupil spending as an average over the state is 44% higher than if it had been increased by inflation over the course of the school funding system. And non-KPERS funding at $12,685 per student is 41% above long-term inflation. For perspective here, just so you know, going into the election in the ballot box today, Kansas taxpayers would have spent $1.86 billion less on public education last year if per pupil funding had been increased only by inflation, meaning that them talking about the inflation cost, the cost of living, the cost of expenses based on inflation, we haven't had enough because it hasn't grown with inflation, is lies, lies, and more lies. We've spent an increased spending on education higher, 41 to 44% above inflation, with record cash reserves, with record spending, and they tell us that they don't have enough money. Put that into perspective when we talk about educational funding. Got some calls on the line. We'll take you here as soon as we come back. This is The Voice of Reason. Stay here.
The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier on the Big Talker, KQAM.
Back into the Voice of Reason right here on the Big Talker KQAM. These are the important things that you need to remember going into this election, because we've been fed through the media, through the agenda, through the progressives, a load of lies over and over and over again. We just heard Jim Ward at the federal level talking to Senate Democrats trying to stop tax plans at the federal level and tax reform because of the failed Kansas experiment here, because of all the cuts we've had to do with education, which lie, and more lies. But they get away with it because no one calls them out on it. So that's what our job is right here, right now, with these elections. Let's go to the phones here, shall we? Good morning. What's your name?
It's Wallace. How we doing?
Good morning, Wallace. How are you, sir?
Doing well, doing well. Hey, two things.
Go for it.
One, what is it going to take, and I'm serious about this, to amend the Kansas Constitution to get the Supreme Court out of the school funding formula? I think, seriously, I mean, hey, if we amended our Constitution to define what marriage is. Why can't we do this to rewrite that gives the legislature, the people that we elect,
Mm-hmm.
the exclusive authority to spend our money? They're accountable to us. These judges sitting up in Topeka, they're accountable to nobody.
No, you're absolutely right. And that is something that absolutely does need to be done. I asked that exact same question to Chris Kobach, actually, when I went to the Young Republicans meeting last month. And I asked him that question. How do we fight the Supreme Court? What do we have to do? And he mentioned that exact same thing. We have to change. We have to amend that amendment. We have to create a clause. We have to do something in there. But in order to do that, we need a legislature that is going to fight and stand up against the Supreme Court, that's going to say, you do not tell us the power of the purse and how much money we actually need to be spending here. We need to address the actual phrasing of that suitable and equitable, or not even equitable, but suitable funding as related to the government, not to the state, not to education, not to the children, whatever. We need to amend that. And in order to do that, we need legislators that are strong enough to stand at the Supreme Court and actually have an agenda to want to change that, as opposed to ones who may be funded by many of the special interests involved in education, wanting to continue to see an increase in spending year over year. It's going to take a lot of time, and we have too many that are up there right now that don't have that agenda in mind.
Well, here's what I'm saying. The hell with the legislature. The people will do it. I need to know how we go about getting it on a ballot, let the people vote on it, and then they can just do their jobs once we vote on it. And then they don't have the Supreme Court to go run and hide under their skirt and say, oh, look at the big bad court, they're stopping us.
Sure.
You know, I mean, but so I you know, if you'll work with me, you know, I'll start doing what I can do, you know, research on my end. You know, I've called and talked to a couple of our legislators. I'll call them. You know, I think we should vote on it. And then number two, you were talking about the racist Halloween prank kid, you know, the 21-year-old man.
Yes.
I called the prosecutor out in Riley County. I called him up because I was appalled that, you know, this kid filed a false police report. Now, this is what the article said. This is what all the news channels are saying. Even though he filed a false police report, this guy told me, and I'll take his word, but I'm going to go out there and verify it at the police department. They're saying he never filed a police report. It was somebody else. And I was stunned when he was saying that. I was like, what do you mean someone else did? He let that car sit like that for how many days? What was the point?
And that's what I don't get. What's the point of either you or someone else calling in a fake police claim for racial slurs on your car when you did it yourself? When you see the division happening in the country right now, and even in our communities, I don't see a benefit for that in any way, shape, or form. Wallace, I appreciate it, my friend. We'll continue this discussion and bring up a good point when we come back. We'll address that. This is The Voice of Reason. Stay here.
When a headline just isn't enough,
Is that all you got?
it's time to wake up the right way.
All right.
This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier on the Big Talker, 1480 AM and 1025 FM, KQAM.
Welcome back into The Voice of Reason right here on the Big Talker. Appreciate you hanging out with us today. It's Election Tuesday. It's kind of an important day. It's the most patriotic day that we can actually have. And welcome into it here. 721-825-5721 Talk. Wallace brings up a good point before the bottom of the hour break. And I want to get to this audio of our recap and montage of all the school board candidates in a minute. But first, he mentioned the idea, what can we do to change the wording of the Constitution without the legislator? Is there anything we can do? Because they're not going to do it. There are too many that are paid for and bought by, talk about special interests, the ones that want more education funding. As you know, is a complete falsehood, with the record cash reserves right now sitting there, with the record amount of spending, with the inflation and actually spending on an increase in spending on education 44% above inflation rates, and then they complain that they don't have enough money. It's just not true. So what can we do to change the wording of suitable funding in the Constitution? I'll bring somebody on and talk about that, because that's a good question. I'd like to think that if we could start a petition, if we could start it on the home front to get it on the ballot and have the Kansas individuals vote on it ourselves, this would have been tried. I would like to say that it would be. And I don't know the legalities of how the Constitution needs to be done here in the state of Kansas, so maybe someone has that answer. If it hasn't been done, then guess what? Guess what we're going to be doing on this show? Guess the movement that we're going to be starting here, if that's a possibility. So we'll talk to somebody about that. Let's go to the phones here, take a few calls, shall we? 721-8255, 721-TALK. Good morning. What's your name?
Good morning, Andy. It's Ron.
Ron, how are you, sir?
I'm doing pretty good. In the last 10 days or so, there has been an article in the Eagle that says that Speaker Reichman in the State House wants to do that.
Wants to change the wording of the Constitution?
Yes, he wants to do that this session.
That would be nice, but it's not going to go. I don't see it going anywhere. There's too many in there right now that are, I mean, look at what we just did in the last session. We just increased taxes, the largest tax increase in state history, because that they're so scared of the Supreme Court. They didn't block the Supreme Court with their decision on there. So I don't see them having enough gonads or a spine, per se, let's put it that way, to do something like that.
Well, the thing of it is that even if they don't do it this time, as far as we need to get it to a vote to identify the ones. That's the problem. We need to get things to a vote where we can identify these people to the public. And that way, when they do vote, they know who the heck they are.
I completely agree, Ron. I appreciate the call. You're absolutely right. I mean, we the people, and I hate using that term, but we the people in the state of Kansas, we should have that ability that if we don't like the way the Constitution's written, if there's a flaw, if we see the flaw happening internally with government operations to where they're not going to fix it on their end, we should be able to do it ourselves. Now, whether Congress is able to and the legislature is going to stand up and do it themselves, then all the power to you. Why the hell haven't you done it in the last few years? So that way we don't continue to see this lawsuit going over and over and over and over again. I don't want to see that anymore. We're seeing record number spending, and they need to get their accountability done on their end at the education level, at the district level, at the school board level, wherever it needs to be. I don't know. At the school board level, maybe. At the Department of Education, the KNEA, maybe. I don't know where it needs to be, or maybe across the board. But we need to see that transparency and accountability with the spending as opposed to just fighting for more spending. And if it's because of that suitability within the Constitution, that needs to change, whether from us or from them. Let's make it happen. Let's go back to the phones here, shall we? Good morning. What's your name?
Hey, good morning, sir. It's Drew.
Drew, how are you, sir?
Amazing.
Good.
You came back from break and said something that I think we need to clarify. You said this is kind of an important day for us. This is the important day.
Absolutely.
This is the reason why. And I hope everybody's been doing their homework. Hope everyone's been paying attention, because it's way too easy for folks to go, oh, it's just the mayor, just the city council, just the dog catcher, just the school board.
No, these are the most important ones that we have.
Right, and it's simple. It's very, very simple, okay? And here's why you needed to be listening, or if you got time today and you got to find their positions, because where do you think all of the worthless legislators at the state, at the federal, who don't have spines started? You know, where do you think all of these self-important members of the administration process got started? Where do you think these members of the judiciary who think that their opinion is above the law got started?
Sure.
Well, they got started in the school boards and the neighborhood advisory boards and the city councils and the county commissions. They got started down on the local levels. And if we can stop them now before they have a chance to betray the public trust,
sure.
If we can vet them now by going in and taking a look and seeing what is the character of this person, then we can save ourselves decades of pain by not putting them in those positions to begin with.
No, you're right. You're right. And Drew, I appreciate that. I mean, we stop it now. Not only is it for the long term with what candidates actually get in, what elected seats are actually there, and what kind of power we give certain individuals, which is very true, but it also helps us immediately here. We have serious issues with the spending at the education level. Now, I don't think everybody's got the bad intentions of trying to be the money grabber. Some of them are completely naive to the fact that we have cash reserves that are at record highs or spending that's at record highs. I believe that some of them are aware of that but don't see that as the main issue here. But when spending's an issue across the board, this is where it starts. We can fix our home at the local level and at the community level, which helps us in the short term and in the long term. We need to be aware of that. So, yes, get out the vote. Hopefully that we do turn out, and hopefully we make the right decisions for that. Speaking of the school board, we talked to 6 out of the 10 candidates on the Voice of Reason here over the last week and a half, 2 weeks, and I put together a little montage. If you did not hear it yesterday, I want to play it for you. It's about 8-10 minutes long here, but also if you're not able to hear it, we'll also have it on the podcast as well as a special podcast for you just to be able to listen to this. But this, Wichita School Board candidates, this is their story. 4 districts, 10 candidates, 6 joined the Voice of Reason. This is their story. Starting in District 1, the incumbent running for the 3rd term for the Wichita School Board, Betty Arnold joins the Voice of Reason.
I have served on the board for 10 years. This is my 3rd term running. What got me involved is just caring for kids. Someone had to step up and inspire me, and I've always appreciated that. So now I'm in a good position to give back, or I have been in a position. Well, one of the reasons that I initially ran was to try and work with the achievement gap. I was very concerned with the African American achievement. It has always lagged significantly behind. And what I've seen over the past 10 years is that we've gradually narrowed that gap. I think one of the major things has been just to focus on the fact that we have a problem. And one of the great things about this community is when we acknowledge this is a problem area, then we put our efforts, our energies, our hearts, our minds together to try and work toward a solution. Unfortunately, when it comes to education, it's not an overnight success. It's just day by day by day. We've looked at a number of ways of trying to save money. And if you think over the past 8-9 years, $98 million is a lot of money. And there have been a lot of things we've had to sacrifice. Not only have we had to sacrifice increase in wages, though we have marginally been able to offer something to the staff over each negotiated year, it has not really been significant. But also there have been other areas that are just as significant because we've had to cut spending on those support things for our students, programs for our students.
Her challenger, local activist, and the youngest candidate in the election, Ben Blankley.
I've lived in Wichita for 10 years, and I've worked as a systems integration engineer at Spirit Air Systems that whole time. And so I come to the candidacy from an advocacy activist kind of background. I was previously on the board of directors of the Wichita Community Theater. I was elected president there, dealt with the community, dealt with issues involving public policy and things like that. One of the things that I could bring that's unique is I'm one of the youngest candidates running in this race. I'm a young parent myself. I have a full-time day job. I have a lot in common with not only the parents, but also the teachers and the certified staff and the school district. So I think I can bring a unique perspective to the decisions at the board table from that type of background. At the local level, what we can do is we can tailor our specific curriculum to the individual building even, because we serve a wide variety of students. And so in order to provide an adequate and equitable education for every student, you need to specialize. You have IEPs, you have honors classes, things like that, that you can achieve through the budget and policy process that can customize the learning environment for each student and allow everybody to succeed. Across our city, our magnet schools are in our impoverished areas, and so you can pull in a wider variety of socioeconomic backgrounds by incentivizing students to get bused to a magnet school instead. And so one way we can further incentivize that is to expand the magnet program and allow for some internal school choice among the public schools.
In District 2, 3 candidates are joining the race. Deborah Washington did not join the Voice of Reason, but the other 2 did. In District number 2, Julie Hedrick has been involved in the administration for the Wichita School District and now looking to join the school board.
I have been a lifelong resident of Wichita Public Schools, and so I really love Wichita Public Schools. I went through them as a child, And then I had a 28-year career with Wichita Public Schools in the facilities division. Instead of being on the teaching side, I was on the operational side. So I just really love our district. I am a proponent of public education and of USD 259 in particular. And now I'd like to have the opportunity to just go back and serve in a different capacity. Well, I think the importance of the classroom size is just the challenge for our teachers. Right now in the state, because of all the budget cuts that we've had over the last 9 years, education hasn't been as valued as much as maybe it should be. So our teachers haven't had significant raises over the last years. So as our budget increases, we need to get those salaries back up for the teachers. They have a really challenging job, and the larger classroom sizes are, the more challenging it is. But in Wichita Public Schools, we educate all children, and our teachers are the most important person for our child's education in the school. So whatever we can do to promote our teachers, to tell them what a great job they're doing, and to encourage them and to get more teachers in, more young people into education, those are what issues are important to me.
And the third candidate for District 2, Trish Heilman, has looked towards the school board after focusing on parent involvement in the community.
I have 5 kids in the district. I have been serving in PTOs and site councils and all that kind of stuff through their whole schooling. And I became involved in the school board when I was trying to advocate for a teacher that I thought was getting a raw deal. And so I have been the last 4 years organizing a parent group for her. PTO presidents, vice presidents come to my house quarterly and get to tell Joy what's going on in their schools. And then Joy can tell those parents what's going on at the school board. It's this connection that no other district has. We have a lot of discussions. In 2012, they closed schools, and they shared that they've been talking about closing these schools for 18 months, but they only talked to the public about it 2 months before. And then parents were up in arms. If they had had 18 months to advocate, to get used to this idea, that would have been one thing. And if they had been having those brave discussions 18 months ago, it would have been a different outcome than the huge blow-up that it was in 2012. I think one of the biggest things we have to do is unshackle teachers' hands. We have been, for the last 10 years, putting in front of them scripted curriculums where they have got a script, except for amazing actors who really can show off their stuff, can really get kids excited when they're teaching from a script. I think that we have overstructured them. Currently, we do something called a bell-to-bell curriculum. From the minute the bell rings in the morning to the minute the bell rings in the evening, they have a schedule. What we need to do is offer parents that actual choice. Currently, we have our magnet system. Parents who don't want to go to their neighborhood school can fill out a magnet application, but they know that they've been put in a lottery. You have a chance to go to the magnet school you want to go to. I think we need to increase the ability of parents to know that they're going to not have to go to that school that's their local school by giving them a choice.
In District Number 5, Peter Grant is set to challenge the incumbent, Mike Rohde. Unfortunately, neither candidate was able to join the Voice of Reason on KQAM. And finally, in District 6, 3 candidates are on the ballot. 2 joined the show. Ron Rosales was not able to join. Walt Chappell, however, looks to join the school board after years of advocating for education legislation in the state of Kansas.
Well, I've got over 40 years experience actually in education. I have my PhD from Michigan State in that area of curriculum and instruction. But I've helped work both at the K-12 and at the secondary level. It's been a real treat to work with students at all grade levels. We've got a lot of places where we could use the funds more effectively, make sure the kids learn job skills. But we're using funds for all kinds of fads. We have to have relevant curriculum for one. I taught science, and I made sure that I tried to make it very interesting, something that kids could relate to. And when they did, they saw, here's a teacher that's really trying his best to make sure they learn something that they can apply. Too often we've got very esoteric stuff going on in the classes. It's boring, and many of the kids don't see any relevance to it. So they just shut off their brain, let alone, leave the school. First thing we got to do is get rid of Common Core. It's making our teachers go nuts, trying to read a script, follow a standard. They've got to be on a particular standard on a given week, and if they're not, then the principal can say, oh, you're not doing a good job. Well, that's crazy. And many times the kids are seeing through it. The math is just totally confusing for parents, teachers, and the students. So if we get back to teaching the basics, reading, writing, arithmetic, the things that we all know work, and when they're interested in a topic, they'll read all kinds of stuff about that. We don't have to force them into square peg in a round hole.
And their opponent, Shirley Jefferson, a former school board member, looks to join the school board again.
I am a retired compliance investigator for Boeing. I have been retired since 2004. I have a Master of Science degree in human resources and also in business administration. But the reason that I'm running, education is just facing so many challenges from the inside out and also from the top down. Some of the ideas that I have, because I feel that the graduation rates, we've been working on those. The changing of the curriculum, doing everything that we can to make sure that our kids are learning. I believe that we're very strong in that area. My platform is about family engagement solutions. I believe that we need to do a better job of working with our parents because they are the first teachers. And so when they come into our schools, we need to make sure that we're treating them with respect and also helping them to step through the processes with the school district. Fiscal accountability, of course, everyone knows that there is nothing we can do about what the state gives us, but what I am committed to is doing everything that I can to make sure that every dollar that we spend goes toward the success of our children.
There it is. That was the candidates, 6 out of the 10 that joined us here on The Voice of Reason for Wichita School District. The question is, which one are you going to support? Who will you support? What kind of movement can we create here at the local level? This is The Voice of Reason on KQAM. Stay here.
This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Lots more to get to here on The Voice of Reason. Stay tuned to hour number 3. We still have our giveaways for the day. The Dave Ramsey book giveaway brought to you by You Build It of Wichita. That's coming up in hour number 3. Also, we have not done it yet. Starts today, our Thanksgiving turkey drop. Oh, yeah. You get a free turkey for Thanksgiving. That's coming up in hour number 3 as well, along with the election. Get out the vote, get out the vote, get out the vote. I want you to call me up and tell me that you missed part of the show because you were at the precinct voting, because it's that important. This is your show. It's all about you in our movement. This is your show. It's time to speak up, speak out, speak loud, speak proud, speak the truth, and always speak some reason. Hour number 3 of The Voice of Reason coming up in a minute. Stay here.
It's time for Reason.
School funding did not go down. A flat-out, absolute lie. Across the board, in every district as an average, the state funding went up 1% to 2% every single year Governor Brownback has been in office, even after the tax cuts, even after the budgetary issues. The budget continued to climb every single year, and education spending grew by 2% every single year Brownback has been in office.
This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Then I get on my knees and pray. We don't get fooled again. Don't get fooled again.
Hi, good morning to you. Welcome into The Voice of Reason. Hour number 3 of The Voice of Reason right here on the Big Talker, 1480 on the AM side, 102.5 on the FM side, KQAM. It is a Tuesday. It's Election Tuesday. It is the most important day of the year. It is the most patriotic day of the year. Welcome into it, and it's an honor. I love being able to have you along on such an important day like this, trying to get the issues out, trying to get the information out, trying to get you to go out and get out the vote, get out the vote, get out the vote. 8 minutes past the hour, 721-8255-721-TALK. If you want to join in this hour, The Voice of Reason brought to you by Network Consultants. They are an infrastructure company, and small business owners, listen up. They work with small to medium businesses. You have your computers, you have your network, you have your machines, you have everything trying to communicate and talk to one another. You have your backups, you have your security. and they can help you with all that. They work with your firewalls and sonic walls, their database and safety and security, network communication, VPN, backup solutions, even getting you set up on the cloud, which so many people are doing today. Here's what happens. You have all your computers in your network. You maybe have your network printer where all the computers print off a one network deal. You try and share folders and files with one another so that way you can try and work in unison. You have a great program that may be working for your accounts receivable or whatever you do for your business. They can help you make sure everything's running smoothly. It's an extremely important part of the business that sometimes gets overlooked. You don't spend a whole lot of time or attention on that side, and when something goes down, it actually costs more money to fix the issue than it does to actually maintain it in the first place. They can help you with that. Call now. Tell them I sent you. You'll get your free network analysis. They'll come out, visit your business, review your entire system, help you any way you can with any issues that you may have, even help you to guide and manage your own network so you do not need them 24/7. They do have month-to-month plans available. You do not have to do any long-term agreements. All you got to do is make the phone call, 316-201-4624, 316-201-4624, or visit network-consultants.com. Again, network-consultants.com. Tell them I sent you right here on the Voice of Reason. I want to paint you a picture for a second as we go into Election Day and we remind everyone to go out and vote with how important this is. I want to paint you a picture. We've heard throughout the last week or so, and really throughout the last year or multiple years, that the tax breaks in the state of Kansas have been a failure, that the tax experiment, the trickle-down system, has been a failure, that we ran into budget shortfalls. We've heard this over and over and over again. Not once, not one single time in the media have we heard that we need to compensate the differences on revenue into the state by compensating of that by cutting spending at the statewide level, because they think that they are on skeleton crews as is right now at the statewide level, regardless of what program or what department or what agency. They're on skeleton crews. We've heard that our highways are crumbling and our infrastructure is crumbling in the state of Kansas. Lie. Big fat lie. Oh, I didn't even play. Let's try that again. Big fat lie. Hey, there we go. We've heard that education has been cut year over year over year and that we've lost educational funding. That is a lie. We've heard that the corrections facilities have not gotten the money they need to in order to give the raises and the compensation and actually maintain the corrections officers in order to do their jobs, which is partially true, but has never been addressed until after we raise spending, after we raise funding, and that was not on the ballot to be able to get an increase until we see the riots and prison issues that we've seen at the corrections facilities. So that was not an agenda of theirs because it wasn't politicized until now. So we may see that get fixed now, and thank goodness for it. We've seen the Democrats go to the U.S. Senate, onto the Senate floor, and talk about the failed Kansas experiment, trying to lump together, trying to normalize conservative values failing miserably, and it's just not true across the board. Then you see the gubernatorial candidates for the Democrats as they sat down in Strong City and they did a joint campaign appearance for all 5 Democratic candidates to talk about the 6.5% sales tax on food purchases. Wichita teenager Jack Bergeson, youngest of the candidates assembled in Strong City's restored Union Pacific Depot, declared the tax nothing less than a shameful abuse of low-income families. Olathe physician Arden Anderson said the food sales tax increase to a record high by Governor Brownback 2 years ago demonstrated the power of lobbyists and politicians to gorge on bad fiscal policy. Wichita Representative Jim Ward, and really the leader of the pack when it comes to the gubernatorial candidates for the Democrats, and former Wichita Mayor Carl Brewer said the state had to gradually wean itself off the $350 million raised annually by sales tax on food. Quote, "We pay the highest sales tax on food in the country. Mississippi is the lower than we are, and that's not good. It's a horrible tax." And I would agree to some degree that it is extremely expensive. It's unnecessary. But what really ironic in this situation is that we have Democrats talking about lowering taxes. We just raised the largest tax increase in state history because we can't afford to live within our means at the statewide level through state agencies that do not know how to consolidate spending. And they want more money. I'd like to remind you that starting January 1, your tax rates, everybody's tax rates in the state of Kansas will go up again. We already did it retroactively in July. It's a tiered step deal, so by January, you will see another tax increase go up. Not because they already passed the second one, but because that's just the two-step plan of the tax plan that we already passed. We need to remember that. When you go and file your taxes in April, or before that, sometime at the beginning of the year, when you go and file your taxes, you're going to owe the state money while you see more money coming out of your paycheck because the agency said they need more money because they've said that we consolidated and cut across the board, and it's just not true. So how do you fix that? This election doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the state legislators until next year with the midterm election, and we need to focus on that. But the money that's going into, for example, the education system, the over $6 billion going into the education funds, record high for 2017, record high. But they cut, right? Remember that. They cut, they consolidated. We had to shorten the school year. We had to put more pressure on the teachers. We consolidated because we had to cut because we didn't have any money, but they're at record high with record number of cash reserves. Remember that. Increased inflation. Above inflation, over 44%. Above inflation was the increase in spending for education. But we cut. So we had to, make some sacrifices. We cut with that record number of inflation and growth in spending for education. While we're going through that debate, the local school boards are what deal with the budget for the school district. This election is one of the most important that we can have, even more so, really, than the state legislators, than the federal government. Because no matter how much money's coming into the system, the legislators, which we need to focus on and make sure that they don't increase spending again after the legislation coming down from the Supreme Court. Yeah, legislation coming from the Supreme Court. Know how oxymoronic that is? It's very true. I said that for a reason. No matter how important that is, no matter how much money's coming in, we have the ability to change the appropriation of those funds by the local school boards. The school board election is such an important deal. Let's take it to the city level now. The city council elections are coming up today as well. Get out the vote, get out the vote, get out the vote. When we talk about the city council election, we have a mayor right now that's doing a phenomenal job, in my opinion, that's bringing new industry to the Wichita area, that's focusing on job growth, that's focusing on trying to expand this area and grow it the way that it needs to grow. We have spending habits at the city level that could be bad, could be good, could be indifferent. We have close ties with the county commission. That's extremely important. Our city decides how much money is going to be going into investments at the local level, investing in new ventures, investing in new businesses, investing in growth, investing in maybe new buildings downtown and revitalizing downtown. Whatever the case is, your city council members are what focus on those issues. It's extremely important to get out the vote. Are you sensing the urgency here a little bit? What happens at the federal level and what happens at the statewide level, we have the most immediate impact on that at the local level. Through the school board, yeah, they may not be able to decide how much money is coming from the state, but they can decide where that money actually goes. Is it going to go towards the growth of the administration side in the school district, or is it going to go towards the teachers? We just saw come down last week the decision by the school board for Wichita, at least, to re-lengthen the school year and to give a 4% raise for teachers. Well done. Great. Why wasn't this done years ago after years and years and years and years and years of complaining about lack of funding when that obviously isn't true? When we've seen last year a decrease in student enrollment in 78 school districts throughout the state and a rise in those same districts in administrative pay and administrative roles. Where's the priorities here? And who makes those decisions? Those are done at the local level. Those are done at the school board level. We just saw the decision come down about a month or so ago about the increase of the administrative side with the addition of a deputy superintendent for the Wichita School District. Good, bad, or indifferent. Maybe they need it, maybe they don't. They've had it for a while. They've gotten rid of it. Now they're trying to bring it back. That's going to be more money to the administration side. Is it because of the new funding that's come in? The record number of spending that's going towards education, the record number of cash reserves, operational cash reserves that's sitting there, the record number of growth above inflation for the school districts? Or is it to know that the Supreme Court just came down and said, even with all that record number of spending, by the way, we're going to do additional spending. We can't tell you how much, legislature, but we can tell you it's not enough. You need to do more. And what are we going to do with that? Wallace brings up a good point in the last hour. What can we do? Can we change the Constitution ourselves? And that's a really good question. Can we start a petition? Because obviously our legislators are not going to do it themselves. They like to. Some of them would like to, but they don't have enough votes. We tried to decrease, conservatives, mind you, tried to decrease the sales tax rate last year on food, and it was denied. They couldn't do it. Even in the House, they couldn't do it. Now the Democrats running for governor are the ones talking about reducing sales tax on food. Why? Because they know they're in the minority in the state. They, first off, hate sales tax rates just for the fact that it's unfair that everybody actually has to pay the sales tax because we like the fair tax, getting rid of the income tax, being able to do a fair tax, and then you just spend on the sales tax, which means that when you purchase goods, then you're contributing. And when you have more money, you contribute more because you're buying more goods as opposed to people on the lower end of the income spectrum. They despise it in the first place, but they're the ones that shot down the income sales tax for food, or the sales tax for food, last year when it was tried by conservatives. So why are they campaigning on it now? We need to remember these things going into elections, and next year for the gubernatorial race is going to be very important, and I'm curious to see the response from Democrats that were at that panel discussion listening to these governor's candidates for the Democrats. All of them in unison, yeah, we need to lower the sales tax. Why didn't you do it last year? Because you were on the soapbox yelling and ranting and raving about needing more tax revenue. Because Governor Brownback destroyed it. And if he only wouldn't have lowered taxes for everybody in the state before, then we would have been able to lower sales tax. And Governor Brownback's the one that raised sales tax. Yes, he did. And I would not have supported that in that sense. But the Democrats now are the ones pushing for it. Why? Because they realize that they're in the minority. They realize that after advocating for years now about tax increases and doing massive tax increases across the board for businesses and for individuals and for trying to spend, the cat's out of the box, ladies and gentlemen. The movement that they've tried to create, the hidden secret agenda that actually agencies are doing well, that we've increased spending across the board 1% to 2% every single year for every agency in the state government, and the fact that education spending is at a record high, with cash reserves at a record high, with the spending increases above inflation at 44% above inflation. The cat is out of the box, and they have to change their tone immediately. If they continue to try and rail on the same things the way they've been doing for years, they're going to fail, because people are beginning to wake up and realize that they have been lying, that the propaganda they've been spouting has been not true, and that they're going to get in trouble for it. So now they're going to all of a sudden be the party of fiscal responsibility, of financial responsibility at the state level, and then trying to lower taxes on you because the burden's too high, after they just raised the highest tax rates on you in state history. After they've increased state tax rates, the highest in state history. If you making a full family household, $60,000 or more, paying the highest tax rate in the state. But we need to lessen that burden on you by now lowering the sales tax because we don't like that on there. The lies, the manipulation, and the twisting of it, the cat's out of the box, and their platform is devastatingly false, and people are beginning to realize that. 21 minutes past the hour. It is time. It's now time. We've never done this yet. It's the first one of the season. It is the KQAM KGSO turkey drop. And if you want your turkey, it's time for you to call in. Let's do caller number 3, 721-8255-721-TALK. And here's how this works. The KQAM KGSO turkey drop brought to you by Augusta Flight Center, Just Right Auto Repair, Best Friends Pet Clinic, MJ's Truck Repair of Mound Ridge, Kansas, Croft Lumber of Heston, Kennedy Tire and Auto Care Center, Kiter Nursery and Firewood, Davis Liquor Outlet, Scott Child's Old Time Clock Shop, Spears Restaurant and Pie Shop, and Derby Mattress. Here how this is going to work. 721-8255-721-TALK. Call in right now. We'll get you on the list. We'll get you, let's see. Well, actually, you know what? We got a caller right now. Here's how this is going to work. I'm going to choose 3 of these businesses. You have to guess which one we're dropping the turkey on. If you remember this old-timey, when they used to do it on the radio, oh my gosh, they're turkeys, and they're dropping the turkeys. That's exactly what we're going to do here. We're going to make you decide which business it's going to land on. If you win it, you win a free turkey. That's simple. If you don't win it, then we got to do it again. So let's go to the phones here, and let's choose 1, 2, and line number 3, and get you on the line here. Good morning. What's your name? Hello.
Hello.
Oh, how we doing?
Oh, I'm doing good, man. Let's listen to the radio. Go ahead.
Hey,
I didn't hear your rules.
That's all right. That's all right. What's your name?
Carlos.
Carlos, fantastic. All right, here's how it's going to work. I'm going to choose 3 of our sponsored businesses. You have to choose one and see whether the turkey drops on that one or not. If it lands on that business that you choose, then you win the turkey. If not, then we got to try somebody else here. So out of Augusta Flight Center, Just Right Auto Repair, and Best Friends Pet Clinic, which one do you think the turkey's going to drop on?
Let's do the clinic.
The Best Friends Pet Clinic. Very good. Let's go ahead. The helicopter's flying above. We're ready to drop the turkey. Let's see where it lands from Augusta Flight Center, Just Right Auto Repair, Best Friends Pet Clinic. Will it land on the Pet Clinic? There it is. A winner right off the bat. Well done, Carlos. Hang tight. We'll get your information off the air here. You got yourself a Thanksgiving turkey brought to you by all of our wonderful participating sponsors. By the way, the turkey is provided by Jim's Apple Market of Cheney, open 7 days a week. And appreciate them partnering up, giving us the turkeys and being able to do that. We'll do this every day for the next few days. Stay tuned in. We have to land it on every single business. Keep track on which one it lands on here and which one it doesn't, because you just may be the next winner next time. Thanks again, Carlos. Congratulations. We'll get your information here. This is The Voice of Reason on KQAM.
The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier on the Big Talker, KQAM.
I love doing the turkey drop. It's that time of year. It's Thanksgiving, and we got 10 more to go, 9 more to go, so stay tuned in. We got 9 more days of the turkey drop giveaway. We'll do another one tomorrow. Stay tuned in for it. Plus, before the show is over, we still have to give away Dave Ramsey's book, The Total Money Makeover, brought to you by You Build It of Wichita. Stay tuned. We'll do that again coming up soon as well. Lots more to get to. It's open lines to you. It's Election Day. Let's make it happen today. This is The Voice of Reason on KQAM.
Keeping Republicans and Democrats accountable. This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Well, good morning to you. Welcome back into The Voice of Reason. Wrapping up the show today, the last 30 minutes. Appreciate you hanging out with us here on the Big Talker. 721-825-5721-TALK if you want to join in. I want to hear from you if you voted today already this morning. It's such an important election. I think we should stay on that topic. What do you think? If you voted, you don't have to tell me who you voted for. I don't really care. But I'd love to hear from you. Just the fact that you went out, that you voted, that you made your voice heard, kind of a big deal there. Give me a call, 721-825-5721-TALK. I'll be voting this afternoon once I get off and I head home. We will be, by the way, covering local election coverage for the area, not just for Wichita, but the surrounding area as well within our listening range. Starting at about 7:30 tonight, I'll be doing some top and bottom of the hour reports. Stay tuned in there. And looking forward to actually doing some reports from there, trying to get the information out. We will do a recap on it tomorrow as well. And again, I can't reiterate and urge strongly enough the importance of these elections. I know it's just city council, it's just school board. You got kids in the school, right? You got individuals that are talking about school funding, what we can do to fix it at the statewide level. This is how you do it. This is how you fix it. So get out the vote, get out the vote. And, oh, by the way, get out the vote. 721-825-5721-TALK. Let's go right to the phones here, shall we? Good morning. What's your name? Hello.
Hi, I'm Jordan.
Hi, good morning. How are you?
I'm good. I just got out of the ballot.
I love
10
it.
seconds ago.
I love it. How busy is it at the precinct?
It is dead. There's
Really?
about 7 officials, 1 old lady, and I there.
Well, it's unfortunate. I guess it's not out of the norm for a special election. Hopefully we see a good turnout. Did you ask them? Have they been able to see maybe a little rush before work started, an hour or so ago?
They said it's been dead so far, but I do have my husband and my friend going out later this afternoon when she gets out of class.
Good. At least we're on the right track there. Well, hopefully we can see a better turnout, but that precinct did. Now, where's that precinct located generally?
I'm at Seneca and Harry Street, roughly.
Okay. All right. Well, hopefully we'll see a better turnout there, and maybe we can see some good turnout. Jordan, I appreciate it. There it is. already. Someone out there voting, making the voice heard, and getting that sticker. Wear it proudly today, Jordan. It's a great time to be able to wear that I voted sticker. I may have to do it. I've never done it before. I don't like doing it, but may have to do a selfie today after the I voted happens this afternoon. 721-8255-721-TALK. Who else has voted today? Small turnout in that location. Maybe we're seeing a better turnout elsewhere. If you're, by the way, one of the precinct workers, then talk to us as well. The process. For those of them that may, I usually don't go and vote. It's not really my thing, not a big thing. Talk to us about a process. If you have been a precinct worker, if you are a precinct worker, talk to us about the process. What it takes to go in and vote. Is there any, as the media has reported as well, some of the voting suppression that's happening, trying to stop individuals from being able to vote? Yeah, I wonder if that's going to happen at the local election as well. Not since the death of the poll tax and literacy test in the 1960s has access to the ballot been so under siege. That, according to the latest report, the latest attack on Chris Kobach, conveniently right before an election. This has been floated around some of the mainstream newspapers in the state. And as the march toward Election Day 2018 begins, of course, they do it just a day or before this election here, the special election around the state as well. The forces that helped abolish those voting obstacles appear to be moving in the opposite direction. Fueled by conservative Supreme Court rulings, GOP politics, and President Donald Trump's unsubstantiated claims of voter fraud, attacks on ballot access now threaten to make voting more of a privilege in the United States than a constitutional right. Give me a break. First off, if you've been suppressed by voter suppression in some way, shape, or form, please call me and explain this to me. If you've been oppressed by not being allowed to vote because you had to identify yourself at a voting precinct, please let me know. If you tried to register to vote and you were not able to register to vote because you didn't have the proper documentation, please let me know. I'm curious. Let's do our own internal Voice of Reason polling here on voter suppression and how many people have been abused by the system Chris Kobach has put into place to not allow people to be able to vote. We read the stats, about 4 or 5 months ago? Of some of the numbers came out by absentee ballots and provisional ballots. And the provisional ballots we gave out a bunch in the state of Kansas during the general election last November. A bunch of them. What was it, 14,000, something like that? And we turned away and ended up disregarding close to 4,000 or 5,000 of them. A very small amount. It was close to like 20%. And the fact was that they came out and made the claim that, hey, we want as many people to vote as possible. We gave them the provisional ballot. Then we went back to look through the laws to see whether they were able to vote or not. We were able to count some. We were able to disregard others. That's how the process was, but we wanted people to go out and vote. As opposed to our neighboring state, Missouri, that gave out very few provisional ballots and turned away and disregarded many of them, close to like 60-70% of those provisional ballots. Meaning that they turned away way more than we did, and we gave out way more than they did. That's a good thing, right? Now we're seeing, of course, Chris Kobach going to the Election Commission at the federal level, working with Vice President Mike Pence. They say it's on hold, but from what he talked about at the Sedgwick County Young Republicans meeting a few weeks ago, that's just not the case. More lies from the media because they found right off the bat, they found thousands and thousands of ballots that have been cast by people who had voted in numerous states or voted when they weren't supposed to, just by basic information that they've been able to obtain. Now, they ask every state to turn in their voting records, the public information, state by state, and many states put up their wall and said, nope, not allowed to do it. So they're having some obstacles being run into them. Then, of course, the ACLU trying to sue them because, heaven forbid, we want to verify people are voting where they're supposed to be voting. It's the ongoing issue, ongoing debate, and it's very pathetic. But it's convenient that they're talking about the 2018 election for midterm, for governor's races, yada, 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 and it comes out directly before a local election all across the state. So the question I have for you is, if you've been oppressed in some way voting, maybe because of your minority descent, maybe because you are an immigrant and you don't have a birth certificate, maybe because whatever the case is, if you've been oppressed in some way, shape, or form in voter suppression, let me know what that situation was like, because I guarantee you there haven't been very many. I guarantee you that there have not been a, sorry, you're not allowed to vote. We're not going to accept a ballot. We're not going to allow you to vote. We're not going to allow you to have your due diligence and your civic duty to go out and make your voice heard. It's not happening. It's not happening. And if it is, I want to hear about it. And why would you make this story just before a local election? Do you really think that people, I mean, the low turnout already, do you really think that there's going to be the story afterwards that says, oh, local school board got corrupted by voter suppression laws by Chris Kobach for school board or for city council? Come on, give me a break. With the low turnout that we're going to see already, unfortunately, I'd love to see a 20, 30% turnout the way we do with a normal general election. With this one, we're going to see they're guesstimating between 5 to 8%. It's pathetic and it's sad, but that's the reality of it. Is there going to be the story afterwards? Oh, voter suppression happened. Voter suppression. It was the voter stuff that actually happened. That's really scary, and we didn't like to see that. I don't see it happening. 721-825-5721-TALK. That is the story that came out yesterday, by the way. To block a possible voter ID bill and other legislation that would restrict ballot box access, Democrats need to boost their numbers in Congress. And it won't be easy in 2018. Many red state House districts are gerrymandering to Republicans' advantage, and Senate Democrats will be defending more seats than GOP incumbents in 2018. I'm smelling scaredness. I'm smelling and testing the waters because they are desperate. The desperation is leaking through their party on the Democrat side. They're scared of the local elections, which is why this is conveniently reported just before the election. They're getting ready for the gubernatorial races. They're getting ready for the midterms. And the desperation, what can they fall back on? Voter suppression, voter fraud. It's not actually happening. And the scare is that Republicans are committing voter fraud and voter suppression, which is just not the case. Unless maybe you see it. I want to hear from you. 721-825-5721-TALK. Good morning. What's your name?
Hi, Andy. It's Pam.
Oh, good morning, Pam. How are you?
Oh, I'm pretty good.
Good. Have you been voter suppressed in some way, shape, or form?
Well, I may have been and just not realized it.
Well, the question I have is that if you're of minority descent and they say that the voter suppression laws are attacking you, isn't that racist in itself to say that because you're of minority descent, then you don't have the proper documentation to be able to go and register to vote or to show up at the ballot box and vote? To me, by assuming that because of you're of Hispanic or of African-American descent and you don't have the proper documentation, to me, that's a racist notion right there saying, you know what, it's only benefiting white people.
Yeah, right.
But we're never going to hear that side on the media, of course.
Well, I wouldn't mind a literacy test to vote. I don't want a bunch of illiterate idiots voting for the leaders of our country.
Sure.
I like the way the Constitution had it set up. But
well, I mean, if you actually follow the issues and you know what civics actually looks like, and you know the branches of government, you know the powers that lay with each branch of government, you know the representatives or the candidates with their records, you know what they stand for, you're smart and intelligent enough to actually understand them, then go and vote. If you're just showing up because, I guess it's election day, I don't know what's going on or what issues are on the ballot, I don't know who's actually running, but I'm going to go and just vote for somebody, that does more disservice to your community than actually not showing up at all.
Well, and here's Bill Clinton, with his motor voter law that's why the liberals were so hot on getting everybody driver's license, because you were automatically registered to vote. And I got a thing in the mail after that passed, 243 languages we, the taxpayers, pay for ballots.
Well,
and, for countries I've never in my life heard of.
Sure. Well, you've even seen the flyers, I'm sure, that when you come into the country, hey, welcome aboard, here's your flyer, here's where you get your housing, here's where you get the welfare thing, here's where you get this, here's where you get your education.
Right.
And, oh, by the way, all of these flyers are printed up in, like you mentioned, 200-plus different languages, so that way, no matter where you come from, we can assimilate to you instead of you assimilating to us.
And, this is such a burden on me to get an ID. Well, it's certainly not a burden on anyone when they go to the doctor or they go get freebies at the welfare office or wherever to produce a photo ID, because you can't get diddly squat without a photo ID.
But how dare that you ask for that to go and actually vote for the individuals deciding on who's how much money that's actually going to be allotted to you for those social programs.
Well, and you have no skin in the game, so why do you care?
That's very true.
The one that's passing out cigarettes outside of the voting booth is the one you're going to vote for.
Mm-hmm. You're right. Again, I find it offensive that they assume that because you're a minority descent in some way, shape, or form, whether you're an immigrant, whether you're Hispanic, whether you're an African American, but because of that aspect, because of the groupthink mentality, then you are on the lower area of the income scale, that you don't have some kind of driver's license or proof that you were actually born and live here in the country to be able to go and register to vote. So therefore, voter suppression only helps white Republican males.
Right.
It's like, come on. I mean, I'm sure, Pam, being a female yourself, that you have a driver's license, some kind of documentation to prove that you are who you are. To say that, well, women, if they could vote more, then they'd be voting Democrat, but they're not allowed to with voter suppression, or that black guy or gal, they're not able to vote because they don't have that ID because of voter suppression. Give me a break.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's the story that they held. I tell you, and we've said this over and over, the progressives are the most racist, bigoted individuals on the planet. That's who they are. That's what they do. They play the victimhood. They play the groupthink mentality, and they get away with it.
Well, and who thought of all this?
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
it's been going on for a long time.
Such a stink that none of these people have an ID.
They create this scare tactic that they imagine this big bad wolf in the background that's going to get them at any time, when it's not the case, but they build the straw man out of nowhere when it's not even happening, and then they attack the straw man saying that it's all our fault for the straw man being there in the first place.
Right.
It's just not the case. Pam, I love it. Get out the vote today. I appreciate it, and thanks for calling in there. The voter suppression, a very scary thing. It's time to do it. Brought to you by You Build It of Wichita. It's day number 2, and you get a copy of Dave Ramsey's book, The Total Money Makeover. All you got to do is call in right now, 721-8255-721-TALK, and answer the question of the day from Dave Ramsey. And the question of the day is, when you start your debt snowball, what's the first thing that you pay off? Very simple. When you're doing the debt snowball that Dave Ramsey talks about, what is the thing that you pay off first when you begin baby step number 2, which by the way, the baby steps are in this book. It's a great book. It's the one that he gives to everybody when they're starting their debt snowball and getting out of debt. The best way to do so, more than 5 million copies sold. Give me a call, 721-8255-721-TALK right now, and we'll get you your copy if you can answer that simple question. What is the first thing you pay off when you're beginning your debt snowball? Let's go right to the phones here. Good morning. What's your name?
Jordan. I just voted.
Good morning, Jordan. All right. The question is to you. When you're starting your debt snowball, then what is the first thing that you pay off in that debt snowball, according to Dave Ramsey? What do you think?
Pay off your smallest debt first.
The smallest debt first. There it is. A winner. 2 in a row there, Jordan. Hang tight. Stay on the line. We'll get your information. But you just won yourself a copy. See, you already know the book. You already know what you need to do here. Brought to you by You Build It of Wichita. We appreciate them partnering up with us here. We have a few copies of these. We're going to be doing this for another week or so. The Total Money Makeover, brought to you by You Build It of Wichita. Congratulations to Jordan winning that one. We'll do another one tomorrow. 9 minutes to the top of the hour. This is The Voice of Reason on KQAM. Stay here.
You're listening to The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Way too much fun today. Appreciate everybody hanging out with us here on the radio, online, on Facebook Live, everywhere else that we're broadcasting. It's an honor and a privilege to have you along here. Get out the vote, get out the vote. And by the way, get out the vote. It's going to be a local election. Smaller turnout, which means, by the way, it's going to be closer, which means your vote actually does count. When it's within like 9 votes, you know it's going to be kind of a big deal. And some have been decided that way in local elections. So vote, vote, and vote. Let's wrap up the show with a phone call, shall we? 721-8255-721-TALK. Good morning. Oh, I guess we lost him there. That's all right. I'd like to remind individuals, by the way, coming up tomorrow, we're going to try, it's not confirmed yet, not sure who the guests are, but we're going to be talking with some individuals from the American Conservative Union as they're doing their rally here at Wichita State University on Thursday. You ever been to CPAC, the Conservative Political Action Conference in Washington, D.C.? Yeah, kind of a cool deal. They're the ones that host that and put it on. They're doing a rally here in Wichita on Thursday. It's free, by the way. Free to register, free to go to. You don't have to charge a thing. All you got to do is go to conservative.org And you can register for that. We're going to get some of the speakers hopefully on the show tomorrow, either in studio or on the phone to talk about what's going to come up for the event. It's going to be a lot of fun. Hopefully on Thursday, we're going to have Mayor Jeff Longwell from Wichita to welcome the new city council members on to the city council, talk about some of the ideas and some of the things that are happening here locally and what they're going to be part of. So we're trying to get that confirmed as well. So a couple of days full of guests, full of great things. Now we can start focusing on the legislative session and the races next year. But today, it's time to vote. I'm going to be voting here in just a few hours. Looking forward to it. Hopefully, we see the precincts beginning to fill up because it's that important. Get out the vote. Remember what we talked about. Remember the issues. Remember what's important for us in the local community. When we fix our local community, the rest of it kind of falls in line. And that's why it's so important. This is your show. It's time to speak up, speak out, speak loud, speak proud, speak the truth, and always speak some reason. This is the Voice of Reason on KQAM. Get out the vote. Have a great day. We'll be back on Wednesday to kick off your midpoint of the week. This is the Voice of Reason. Have a great day, everybody.